Hey guys, today I wanted to talk about um, a little bit different sort of track than what we've been discussing so far. A little bit, I think. Um, Maria brought up Studio Ghibli in her presentation in regards to the moving panorama and what that might mean in a modern sense. And Sarah also introduced Grave of the Fireflies into the discussion, um, which is a Studio Ghibli film. And Grave of the Fireflies is it's a really difficult movie to watch, but I also think that it's a really important film. It's an animated film. Um, Studio Ghibli focuses on more traditional animation, I guess you can say. Things like Pixar and DreamWorks Studios are CGI, whereas Studio Ghibli is, it's 2D animation. It's all hand drawn, very beautiful, very colorful, very traditional. Um, but Grave of the Fireflies is about two fictional characters who um, go through the later days and the aftermath of World War II in Japan, and it's about a real event that happened that was, you know, devastating, and it places these two fictional Japanese characters in it, um, for the sake of storytelling. But these are all very real events that real people in Japan went through. And we're able to sort of go through and observe these events firsthand through these two fictional characters. So, in relation to the moving panorama, you are experiencing events and you're taken on a journey through the storytelling of. I'm gonna look on my computer really quickly to see who the director of the film was. I'm gonna pronounce his name incorrectly. It's Isao Takahata. I'll refer to him as Takahata from here on out. He creates a very moving tale and informs the audience of the emotional turmoil that the people of Japan went through as a result of World War II. And it's interesting to watch as an American because I've learned a majority of World War II, the events of World War II through elementary school, high school, and you learn a lot about, the American perspective and, what happened in the concentration camps and things like that. But it's interesting when we're taught about how Japan is involved, we're only taught really about how they were an ally to the Germans, and we don't really delve deeper into what the actual people of Japan went through. Grave of the Fireflies takes us through a really tragic tale of an older brother and his younger sister who endure homelessness and starvation and the lack of employment and malnutrition and the loss of family and the loss of everything that you've ever known. It's a really devastating thing. And they're together because they're family, despite the fact that they're going through the turmoil of war, they don't lose their humanity and they don't lose value in one another. And at the end of the film, they end up finding paradise and they end up in a better place. But it's a very eye-opening thing to watch something and experience something that takes you to another place and teaches you something about something that actually happened in the real world and gives you an entirely new perspective on not only those events but life in general. Um, it's very, it made me think about what the moving panorama means in terms of history, and how much we can learn about history through film, and what potentially people learned about history and through the original moving panorama. That storytelling that they might have experienced could have been based upon real things that happened within the environment that they're being shown. I'm not sure if that's entirely accurate, but I don't think that'd be too far-fetched to ponder. Another example that I wanted to use about, the modern moving panorama would be, I don't remember the title of this film, but it's a short film that we watched in elementary school, so I was really young, about Martin Luther King, and it's another set of fictional characters who endure. They're children, so they're immediately relatable in that they're the same age, but they go through Martin Luther King and who he was as a person and his protests and what he stood for, and they get to know him on a personal level beyond reading about him in textbooks. And towards the end of the film, they go through his assassination and they experience it almost firsthand. And I remember one of the students in my classroom, like, it moved her to tears. And it was interesting to see because, you read about all of that and you're told about all of that. The fact that he was assassinated in the cartoon short film is what moved her to tears. But seeing that on screen made it that much more real. Despite the fact that it was animated, it just made it real. And as a child, that was a very memorable experience. I don't think I'll ever forget that. It's just, it really put into perspective who Martin Luther King was and what he did for the people of America who lacked representation. And I think that the moving panorama is important in that it has the potential to connect us to the real world more so than what we would experience, arguably more so than what we would experience of our own accord, through our own actions. This actually reminds me of, I wrote it down, Rosa was talking about the value of physical experiences because of digital media and how digital media can negatively affect physical experience. I think that, on the other hand, it can enhance physical experiences and make what you experience in the real world just so much more awful. Awful, two separate words. Like the Mona Lisa, I think we use it as an example. Seeing it in person, it just fills you with awe, trying to better use what I just said. Awful. Sorry for being unclear. I thought of another example when discussing the value of physical experiences. I suppose a less serious example, a little bit on a lighter note. Pokemon Go is a mobile game that I'm pretty sure we've all heard of. Pokemon Go, the point of that game, the goal of that game was to get its users up and out into the real world and to experience things in the real world firsthand while, walking around, catching these little creatures and interacting with the other people that are playing the game. And it's interesting in that a traditional video game, you interact with other people who are within the game. other characters within the game, these digital characters, digital representations, or these digital avatars that your friends are inhabiting to go through this world. Pokemon Go, all of the characters are real people. You know, you have the opportunity to connect to real people. And Pokemon in the game tend to flock around monuments and fountains and art installations in the real world. So you can navigate, walk to these places, see them firsthand, all the while connecting to people who are all around you for the goal of catching these little imaginary creatures. And the idea of that is just so sensational to me. And the game is still supremely popular. One personal example that I think I'd want to use is that there's this monument in San Francisco, California. It's near the Embarcadero. It's a monument in a small park, and it's a giant, huge bow and arrow installation just smack dab in the middle of the park. I wish I knew the exact name and the artist of the bow and arrow. But in the little Pokemon Go game, it's an area that you can navigate to where you are more likely to catch Pokemon. I was able to experience this monument and see this monument firsthand and really appreciate it because of this software, because of this video game. And I was able to have this physical experience that I arguably, you know, wouldn't have had as much of a connection to. So I think you can make the argument that digital media decreases the value of physical experiences. I personally wouldn't really agree with that. But you can also make the argument that it enhances them and it makes them just so much more true to life. You know, I think another personal example I can think of, well, not perfectly relating to the moving panorama, I'd bring up another example of music. You know, you as a kid, and sometimes even now, as when you experience musicians and their artwork and their music, it's mostly through a media device, such as a laptop or a smartphone or something that you can, you know, look up media from. You watch their music videos, you take in their music, you see all these pictures and images of them, and then you can go see them live. And seeing them in person, I remember the very first time I ever saw a musician, a band in person, after, you know, listening to them and watching them on screens for years. It was just so monumental to me. It was an experience that didn't even compare to what I was experiencing on screen and through headphones. You know, it was just, these people that used to be images now have depth, and they're in front of you and they're looking at you and performing, and you can just see how they move and see how they perform and see how they embody the art that they create. And that is something that you can never experience through digital media, through a moving panorama, through a representation. So for me personally, I can confidently say that digital media does not take away from physical experiences. Again, you know, I'm ever the optimist, and I'm ever, you know, optimistic and hopeful about the things that are in my life. So maybe, you know, I can understand why people would disagree with my sentiments, but you guys have really sparked my thoughts and my thought process, and you've made me consider a lot of things. So I really appreciate these video chats and everything. I'm getting all mushy-gushy now. It's time for me to stop. All right. Thank you guys for listening to me. I'm looking forward to Friday, tomorrow, the last day. Thanks again. See you guys later.